go ahead and start. Um, I've sent you a couple of messages, so check your messages every now and then. If there's anything important, I'll try to message you in Canvas. Now you can send me an email. My email address is on there, but it's easier just to message me. Email's kind of a pain, but a message is, I'll respond to your email anyway, but you can message me and I'll message you right back if you run into an issue or something happens or there's some glitch or there's some question that you might have got wrong that you thought maybe it was right. And if you make a good enough argument, sometimes I'll give you credit for that. I've done that a couple of times. So the grades are really good so far. And that's fantastic with me. My goal is for everybody to make a good grade. I don't get paid more if so many people make a D or an F or a C or a normal distribution, which a lot of people like to have. I don't care. Yeah, I want everybody to understand nutrition and make a good grade. That's my goal. The hardest part of this class, as you may be figuring out, is working those study guides, because there's a lot of them, and taking the tests. That's the hardest part of the class. The videos, the hardest video, I think quiz you've already taken, that was the one on his most published research wrong. That one's actually the most difficult one. The rest of them actually get easier as the course goes along. You'll see what I'm talking about. And remember, you can watch that video a couple of times before you take the quiz. You can jot down as many notes as you want so that when you take the quiz, you can say, I made a note of that. Some people do that, some people don't. I think it's easier because most of the videos, with the exception of one or two, are pretty short. I try to make them interesting and obviously related to nutrition. Some people say, well, they're controversial. I don't even know what controversial means anymore, especially in today's society. Controversial just because two people disagree doesn't mean it's controversial. Like the one on alternate day fasting. Some people are into that, some aren't, which is fine. That doesn't make it controversial. But there's a lot of health benefits to that. I noticed on some of the comments they were talking about pregnancy, that's not a good idea during pregnancy. That may be true. It may not be true. I don't really know the answer to that. I know that fasting is beneficial even during pregnancy within reason. The thing you got to keep in mind about nutrition, guys, is that you need the proper amount of nutrients over time. Now, the definition over time, what does that mean? Well, that's somewhat subjective. Subjective means somebody's opinion. And when it comes to opinions are neither right nor wrong. That's why politics in religion, very often people just argue and state their opinion, and it's almost pointless just to listen. I'm not that political. I don't really get involved with it. I just kind of try to stay out of it. But nutrition does have a little bit of an opinion in it. But there's some facts that you should be aware of, so that when you form your opinion, you can express that to somebody with some evidence behind it. Guys, I've studied this field for 40 years. And I've changed my opinion on a lot of things. But over time means you need a certain amount of like vitamin B12 over time. You don't have to have it daily. Just like you don't have to put oil in your car every day. You drive your car around and you use a little bit of oil. You don't replace it every single day. You replace it, every few months or whenever it needs to be replaced. Same thing, did you use your brakes? Yes, you use some brake fluid. Do you need to replace that minuscule amount you use every day? No, but you need a certain amount over time. And that the brake fluid might be vitamin B6. The oil might be vitamin D. And that's the way the body works. We have reserves of everything, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, energy to keep you alive for a very long time without eating. And our bodies are actually designed that way, even for kids. Now, with kids, you got to be a little bit more careful because they interpret not eating as punishment, and we've kind of trained them that way. And it's unfortunate because it's led to a lot of health problems in our society as far as cancer and diabetes and things like that goes. Now, in the messages I sent earlier, I noticed that I had already recorded a little bit of information from test number 1, which is due this week. Test number 2 might also be due this week. I don't know, because this is only a 4-week class. It may not be due till next week, but you can work on all the study guides at once if you want, because you can download them all. If you go to the bottom of the module section, you can download every single study guide and start working on it. You don't have to wait till that week to download those study guides only, although the study guides are in that module. And once again, just a reminder, I've noticed 2 people have taken the test and both made A's so far, which is really good. I'm really surprised they took it this early. Because remember, you have until the end of the week, which is Sunday at midnight, to complete that week's assignments. And so, but don't wait till Saturday or Sunday and then try to do everything, but it's not due until then. So don't take test number 1 until you're ready. You have all your study guides. And remember, you get 2 chances. So if you say, oh, I didn't do that well in the first one, then I'm going to take it again. I'm going to do it take it one more time. And then it will record the highest of your 2 scores. I assure you, if you have your study guides done, and I don't expect you to be able to answer every single question on it. They're somewhat ambiguous, some of them, not all of them. And that's by design, so that you actually have to look up a little bit of information and do a little bit of reading and kind of understand it. But if you have your study guides done, even if you don't have your book with you, you need your book to do the study guides, work the study guides, then I think you'll be okay on the test. And I think the 2 people that have taken the test, that's what they actually did. So you'll see as the class goes along. Now, the bonus, if you'll notice, this website is kind of unique. I'm not saying it's better or worse than anybody else's. Everybody's is different, but I just know computer programming. And so I put in these little bonus sound clips every now and then. Some people are taking advantage of that. They'll play a little sound and say, hey, I kind of remember that from years ago. And then you can take the little sound quiz, and if you get it right, then you can get up to 24 bonus points on that. And you can take that quiz up to 24 times. There's even a video which is in the module section, and I can't remember which one it is. You'll have to kind of glance through them all. Remember, you can fast forward through a bunch of them, where I showed students how to get all 24 sound bonus points without even listening to the sounds, just by taking the quiz and randomly guessing, because you can take it 24 times. You could take it once and put A for every single answer, and then it'll tell you which ones are wrong. It won't tell you the correct answer, but it'll tell you which ones are wrong. He's like, whoop, I'm not going to put A. And if you're randomly guessing, you'll get about 1 out of 4 right. And then you just keep doing that, and then all of a sudden you got them all right. I'm not recommending that, because the reason I put that in there, another instructor said, well, this is a nutrition class. Why do you have little sound things or sound bonus clips in there? I said, because it encourages them to navigate the website. Look around. And when you go to vitamins, you'll notice there's one on vitamins way down there. I think it's vitamin Q actually has one. And then they're hidden here and there. And that encourages people to navigate the website, to kind of read the information a little bit. Now, tonight, I'm going to give you, because the few people that are here, there's only 11. This is a class out of 30-something people, but that's fine. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an advantage. Because I'm going to show the test one more time, test number 1. And what it does, it randomly selects questions. There's the test, there's 100 questions on the test. It sounds like a lot, but it's A, B, C, D, true, false. And it'll randomly pick 100, I think, out of 200. But I'm just good. So I'm gonna show 80 of those questions. Now, that's a lot, but that doesn't mean that's the 80 that are going to be on your test. What that means is probably half of them, about 40, will be on it. And these are the exact questions with the answers. Now, it doesn't tell you the answer, but you can look and see, oh, there are the choices on the answers. And so, and I'm going to do that rather quickly so that when you go back and watch the recorded video, you can actually make a note of that or jot it down and say, oh, God, yeah, I remember that question, because that'll help along with the study guides. And I've already done that once, as I said in the earlier message, but I'm going to do it again. So you'll have a lot of this test already done if you take time to watch the video and kind of scroll through it a little bit. So spend a little bit of time doing that, and then I think you'll be okay. So what I want to do here, and let's see, is I want to, because I didn't get into this much last time, let me give you the first code for the little 15-point quiz, which you should take at the end of this so you get your 15 free points. First code is 356. So once again, it's 356. This meeting will not take more than an hour. I know the last one took an hour and 20 minutes. They're scheduled for 2 hours, but usually take about an hour. I'll give you the second code in a little bit and third code at the end of the meeting. And then you can take your little quiz and get your points on it. But I want to go into a little bit more detail. When I say detail, an understanding of what nutrition is about in terms of what's really going on in the body, because it's so misunderstood and misrepresented by many people, and not because they're dumb or don't know, they're just ignorant. And as we mentioned last time, ignorant just means they just don't know. And I understand why they think certain ways, but you have to think at the deeper level once again. Now, this is a little bit of a review from last time, but I think it's worth going over once again. So the human body, depending on what book you read, has about 100 trillion cells. I saw some sources that say there's only 40 trillion, some say there's 50 trillion. The actual number is irrelevant. It doesn't matter, it's just a bunch. But 100 trillion is such a large number, you cannot even comprehend that number, nor can I. You can write it out, but that doesn't mean you understand it. It's so big. Now, what that means is that cells are incredibly small. We have nerve cells, skin cells, brain cells, white blood cells, T cells, you name it, all kinds of cells. Cells, every cell in your body has the ability to make another copy of you. Actually, it can make two copies of you. There's two copies of DNA, the double helix, the code for you, the genome for you, and every cell in your body. So if you have 100 trillion cells, that means you could make 200 trillion copies of you. And there's only 8 billion people in the world, so you could make 1,000 times more of you than there are people in the world, just from the information inside the cells in your body. Now, these cells, every cell has the code to make a copy of you. For example, a skin cell has the code to make a copy of your entire body, not just skin, but it can make a copy of your brain. It can make you. Now, a skin cell is not a brain cell or a neuron, it's a skin cell. So the genes inside the skin cell and the DNA of the skin cell are turned on for the genes that make it a skin cell, because it doesn't need to be a brain cell. But most of the genes in that double helix, which is like the spiral staircase, they're turned off. except for the ones involved with what a skin cell does. But in your brain, a neuron that does many things, the genes for being a neuron are turned on, but the cells in your brain have the ability to make skin also, but those cells are turned off. It's a simplistic explanation, but that's actually what's going on in the body. Certain genes are on, certain genes are off, and every cell has the code to make you. In fact, humans start off as one cell. It's one cell, and then I think when it becomes fertilized, it becomes, this is from child development, I think it's called a zygote, I don't know. But anyway, and then it divides and multiplies, and et cetera, and then cells go through this gymnastics of becoming a person. Now, once again, and I know this is a little bit of a repeat, but cells need many things to stay alive. But two things they constantly need are oxygen and glucose. They have to have those two things all the time. The glucose to a cell is like gasoline for your car. If you deprive a cell of glucose, that's its fuel source, it dies. Some die in a matter of minutes. Some can hang on for hours, but not very long. Just like if you deprive a cell of oxygen, some die in 6 or 7 minutes, some brain cells. Other cells can die within a matter of hours, but they have to have glucose and oxygen constantly. Glucose, or as we mentioned, they'll say blood sugar, but once again, they mean blood glucose. Blood glucose, blood sugar are synonymous with each other, interchangeable. They mean the same thing, although they're not the same thing because there's 6 types of sugars. But anyway, blood glucose. Now, cells, once again, take in glucose voluntarily. Well, where do they get the glucose from? From you. So you have a cell here, and a cell here, and a cell here, and in between the cells, remember, cells are incredibly small. In between the cells is intercellular fluid. And that fluid contains everything the cell needs. It contains the vitamins, the minerals, the phytochemicals, and the glucose, and the oxygen. And that cell takes in what it needs. Now, the cell decides what to take in. We don't. The cell does. The cell decides. Now, there's some things that can get inside a cell without the cell's permission. Water to a degree, excesses of anything up to a certain point, the cell can reject them up to a point. But when you overload the system with too much of something, then the cell gets confused, and sometimes we'll take in too much of something or substitute something for something else that it's not supposed to. But it knows very well how to protect itself. As a general rule, unless there's some disease process going on, cells will not take in extra glucose. It's deadly to a cell. If a cell overeats, it dies. We overeat, we don't die. But if our cells overeat, they die. And if they take in too much oxygen, extra oxygen will actually kill them. So you say, well, if I breathe too fast, it's going to kill my cells. No, it's just that cells actually won't take it in. They'll take in a certain amount. So they take in glucose. So if your blood glucose level goes down really low, gets down to a certain point, once again, I know it's a repeat, but at some point, they call it hypo meaning low glycemia, low blood sugar. Now, there are different books will say different things. I think of blood glucose level kind of like blood pressure. Normal blood pressure is 120 over 80. 120 is the top number, 80 is the bottom number. Systolic is the top number, diastolic is the bottom number. Heart contracts, blood goes through the arteries, pressure goes up, in between beats, it goes down. It oscillates. That's kind of like glucose. Now, 120 is slightly high. I think 100 is considered normal, but it's not dangerously high. After you eat, it's probably higher than 120 anyway. And 80 is kind of low, although not dangerously low. It might be even considered somewhat healthy. But between 120 and 80 was saying taking 100 as being a pretty healthy glucose level. But you hear a lot about A1C tests. That's just a measure of what your glucose average was over the last 90 days. It might be 120 days. I'd have to double check that because red blood cells only live about 120 days. And when they start becoming damaged, glycated, then they can look at the percentage that are damaged by glucose, and they can tell you what your glucose average was during that time. Now, not after one meal, because it's going to be high after one meal, especially a sugary meal. Now, so going back to cells. So cells need glucose, they need oxygen, they need a lot of different things. Now, cells live and die many times. We live and die once. Some cells in our body only live once. Some neurons only live once. But all cells in your body have, once again, and there's videos on this later, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I know we touched on this, but I kind of want you to think of the bigger picture without getting hung up on the details so you can really understand about nutrition. And I think I went over this word last time. I'd have to double check, but it's apoptosis, and I mentioned that. And it's mispronounced often by many people. Think of it as two words. You say apop, like apop, and then toast, but it's not toast, it's ptosis. Apoptosis. Most people do not know what that means. And most doctors don't know what it means. Some do, some don't. Even some nutrition people don't know what it means. But once again, as we briefly touched on last time, apoptosis means programmed cell death. What that means, once again, is this is the big picture of nutrition, because if you don't look at the big picture, you get hung up on details that don't make sense, and that's what happens to a lot of people. Cells, in the DNA of the cells, the code, the 4 letters that make billions of different combinations and codes of everything that cell's supposed to do, there's actually genetic code for the cell to kill itself, commit suicide. That's what apoptosis is. It's programmed cell death. It means that cell is programmed, it's programmed to die. It's programmed to kill itself. We're actually programmed to kill ourselves at the cellular level, not at the overall level, but at the cellular level, we are. Every cell in your body has these genes, these sort of death genes, for lack of a better word, called apoptotic genes, programmed cell death. When that cell becomes very old, it becomes cancerous, diseased, it becomes problematic. There are signals inside the cell that turn on these genes, these apoptotic genes. And a cascade of things happen, and that cell starts the process of dying. Now, it just doesn't die all at once, but what happens is it's complicated. There's all kinds of several Nobel Prizes awarded in this area, but it breaks into little bitty capsules, thousands of them. And these capsules have the remains of the cell. They have the proteins and the amino acids and the nutrients and the vitamins. And these, now remember, there's other cells around. These nutrients are reabsorbed and reused by other types of cells that actually, not all the cells use them, but there are certain cells that can reabsorb them. That cell kind of goes away and is recycled. It doesn't damage the surrounding cells. This process is very necessary. Without apoptosis, you would die in a matter of days. You'd be cancer-ridden, disease-ridden. It's a very dynamic. Dynamic means ongoing. It's constantly ongoing. And I mentioned this last time, but just to give you an idea of how dynamic it is, you have about 1 million cells per second, not per day, per second, that commit suicide. 1 million. I snapped my fingers, 1 million cells in the body just died. Voluntarily, they killed themselves. What type of cells die? Cancerous cells, old cells, defective cells, disease cells, they die. This helps keep you alive. It helps keep you healthy. It's kind of like a tree. Think of the leaves on a tree that become old, they fall, and the tree, those are the cells. The tree grows new leaves. It's kind of what happens. This is called apoptosis. It's a very necessary process. Any process in your body that interferes or slows down apoptosis is going to have negative consequences for your health. Now, as odd as this sounds, because it's so counterintuitive to most people, is this statement. But I stand by this statement, and there's research that supports it, but you have to, when you explain it to people, they get lost in details that don't make sense. Normal blood glucose level or blood sugar level, normal blood glucose level, which is what everybody says, you need to keep it normal. But once again, normal blood glucose level inhibits apoptosis. In other words, it interferes with apoptosis. It slows it down. This accelerates aging. It is one of the causes of cancer. It's definitely one of the main causes of diabetes, autoimmune diseases. It's linked to literally every health condition you can think of. Now, think of the power of that statement. Normal blood glucose level inhibits apoptosis. Yet, in today's society, many people, even in my field, because I used to coach in college for years, trainers still promote this. I've even heard doctors promote this. They tell you, keep your blood glucose level normal. It sounds healthy, but it's not. And the reason being, and this is why you got to think outside the box. The reason being is you got to go back to the big picture of what do all cells use? Glucose. Defective cells, cancerous cells, old cells, especially cancer cells, use glucose. And when you don't eat for a period of time, your glucose level or blood sugar level, blood glucose level drops. Not dangerously low. Maybe you don't feel as good, but it drops. That means every cell in your body has a little bit less glucose. It's not going to let it go to zero unless there's something weird going on in your body. But the first cells that cannot handle a drop in glucose level are the problem cells, the cancer cells. They can't live on ketone bodies. Dropping glucose level kills cancer cells. They know this for a fact, but it also kills unhealthy cells and older cells. This is a good thing because you want those unhealthy cells to die. They're programmed to die. You want to encourage them. Go ahead, die, because the kind of cells that are left are healthy cells, and they'll make copies of themselves, and they make healthy copies of themselves. So you want a lifestyle where glucose level oscillates. It goes up and down, up and down. That's oscillation. Not dangerously high. That's diabetes. It has to stay high for a period of time before it's classified as diabetes. And not dangerously low. That's hypoglycemia. But you need some oscillation in your glucose level. So anybody that tells you eating 5-6 little meals a day is healthy, that's incorrect. Now, I'm not saying you can't be healthy and do that. If the person works out some, they get plenty of sleep, they don't overeat, they eat healthy food. Can they be healthy and eat 5-6 little meals a day? Yes. But they're not as healthy as they could be because of lack of apoptosis. You need to stress the cells to make them healthier. And that's a term we mentioned last time. You don't need to know this term, but Just put it in your brain. It's a term that sounds like hormones. Once again, it's called hormesis. And you Wikipedia or look it up. Hormesis means stress that causes a positive adaptation. And the examples I used last time were exercise. Exercise is stress. It's hormesis. Stresses your heart, makes you healthier. Work out, lift weights, makes your muscles and bones stronger. Get sick, makes your immune system stronger. Drop your blood glucose level, makes the cells healthier. It promotes apoptosis. And this is a lifestyle you want to have. That is why study after study has shown this. People that went from 3 meals a day to 2, they were healthier, they lost weight. Even though they ate the same number of calories, one group ate 1 meal a day, even though it was a really big meal, they were much healthier than the ones that ate 2 versus 3. Every other day, even better. It's a hard lifestyle. Not really. Once you get used to it, it's not that difficult. But it's just a healthy thing to have happen. Now, people will say, well, how do you get your nutrients? Remember, you need them over time. You don't starve to death in a day. It's absurd. It takes 60 days for you to starve to death. 60 days. And that's somebody that's normal weight. And so a day or two is not going to do it. Now, you may not feel good, you may not be able to function. Athletes get real confused about this. They'll say, or somebody that works out all the time, they say, well, I can't do that because I burn so many calories, so I have to eat a lot, but I work out a lot and I'm healthy. And I believe them, they're healthy, even though they may work out a lot. But actually, it makes no difference if you're an athlete or not. It's still a healthy lifestyle. What happens is if you're used to burning more calories, especially if you work out a lot, is that when you cut back on calories, your body becomes more efficient. Just like a car gets more miles per gallon, your body will get more miles per calorie. It uses the food more efficiently. That actually happens when you cut back. Now, it's the opposite of what you might think. Now, don't confuse that with performance. Say in track and field, you're going to need to run a mile, and for time, and your glucose is low because you hadn't eaten all day, your time may not be very good because you don't feel like you have enough energy. Well, that's different. Before competition, eat 2 or 3 hours before, not right before. So your glucose level is normal or slightly high. So you have a little bit of energy and you feel good and you function. That's fine. But for overall lifestyle, you need periods of time where it oscillates, where it goes up and down, especially to fight cancer and things of this nature. There's just an overwhelming amount of information out there about this. And it's people don't understand that because they don't think of nutrition at the cellular level. Like what's happening at the cellular level? They get so confused on that because they'll say, well, how do you get your energy and how do you function and things of this nature. And you still hear myths like don't eat past 7 o'clock. And these are all myths. None of this is true. There's nothing wrong with eating past 7 o'clock. If you eat 1 meal a day and you eat it at midnight, that's fine if that's what you're used to. The time of day, once again, you eat is irrelevant. Now, your mind may get used to it, so you may actually function differently if you have breakfast or if you don't have breakfast, but it didn't change the value of the food. I mean, food is food. It may change the way you feel because you're used to certain things associated with food. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time. Let me give you the second code, guys. Once again, the second code is 362. So the first code was 356. The second code is 362. And I'll give you the third code here in a little bit. I'll try to finish this up by about 7 o'clock. And we'll have I want people to ask a few questions. I like it when people actually disagree. That's fine. That actually is if we're respectful with each other, that's great because I like being challenged. If they might say, well, I heard this or my doctor said that, which is opposite of what you say, that's fine. I explain my viewpoint and they'll explain theirs. And students are smarter than I think people give them credit for. They can kind of figure out what the real truth is if you look deep enough and kind of keep the big picture in mind and don't get too hung up on the details. But I didn't go over this last time, which is my fault, but you don't need to write any of this down. but just kind of put it in your brain, because nutrition, we talk about nutrition. The book will tell you that there's 8 or 6 components of nutrition. There's actually 8. Just because it's in a book doesn't mean it's true. Somebody wrote a book. That's great. Anybody can write a book. And a lot of stuff in books is copied from other books. And so even though something's correct or incorrect, it may just be copied from book to book. But there are 8 parts of or components of nutrition. And this is not a specific question on test 1. It might be on like test 3 or 4. I'm actually not sure. So if you want to jot it down, you can. You can number 1 through 8. I don't know if it's on the first test. It might be on the second test, but you'll be able to figure it out anyway. So there's 8, and these are in no particular order. To understand nutrition, you have to understand these 8 components. All right, I'm going to start with the first 3, and you know these. These are the food groups. I didn't say foods, food groups. And you know these. There's carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. There's only 3 food groups. There's not 4, there's not 5. If you look on the internet at the current USDA government-funded, whatever it is, it's full of nonsense is what it is. I don't care if it's government-funded or not. They list 5 food groups. That's incorrect. It's totally incorrect. Your body only recognizes 3 food groups. Once again, fats, carbohydrates, and proteins in no particular order. Now, the way you those are 3 of the 8. The way you differentiate between, with the USDA food guide, I think it's USDA, it might be something else, but anyway, they actually lists dairy as a food group, and then they might list fruits and vegetables as separate food groups. They're not. Fruit is not a food group, nor are vegetables. So that means fruits and vegetables technically aren't necessary, and that's actually true. Now don't get too hung up on that, because people say, oh, that's unhealthy not to have any, and they're correct, but let's think of the bigger picture again. Fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Food groups. The way you differentiate, once again, between a food and a food group is when you go to a restaurant, you order food, you do not order a food group. Try ordering a food group sometime and see what kind of funny looks you'll get. Tell the person taking the order, oh, give me some protein, not a little fat, but not too much fat, and then some carbohydrates. They'll just look at you and go, what? They don't know what you're talking about. You can say, oh, the food, not the food group. You might say, okay, I want a steak, a salad, and a potato or some corn. Those are foods. None of those foods are necessary. Food is necessary, but the only thing necessary are the food groups. Your body does not care where the protein comes from. It can come from meat or cheese. A lot of fruits have protein in them. An avocado is chock full of protein. Almost all nuts and pecans and seeds have proteins. Proteins are made up of amino acids, and we'll go into that, not in this section, another one later we'll go into that. And then carbohydrates. So we got proteins, which are amino acids. There's many amino acids in nature, by the way. There's 1,000 or 2,000, but our body only uses 20 of them. And they're arranged a certain way to make proteins. We're built out of protein, but protein can be used also as a food. Now, so we need protein. Don't need much of it, but we need it. So it's a food group. Your body didn't care, like I said, if the amino acids came from an egg, or if they came from a pecan, or believe it or not, lemons. Lemons actually have amino acids in them. Lemons. It doesn't care. Amino acids are amino acids. Now, carbohydrates are very misunderstood, and I think explained incorrectly by almost every nutrition book, including the one you have. I know why they explain it a certain way, but I'm going to give you a simpler explanation that makes it, I think, easier to understand. and then I'll tell you why some people will tell you that's wrong, and then I'll tell you why what they're saying is incorrect. Most people, when they hear the term carbohydrates, they think of sugars. They'll say, well, it has sugar. And they substitute the word sugar for carbohydrate all the time. I've seen nutritionists do this. I'll give you a better one-word definition of a carbohydrate. A carbohydrate is a plant. It's just a plant. Your body needs plant material. Sugars come from plants. They come from sugar cane, there's beets, and there's all kinds of sugars and fruits and things of that nature, but it's still a plant. A carbohydrate is a plant. The reason people get confused and use the term sugars for carbohydrates is because they think of carbohydrates raising blood sugar level, which they do, or blood glucose level fairly quickly, and so they associate it with sugar. But the problem with associating with sugar is if you ask somebody, does a stick of celery have sugar? The answer is no. Is celery a carbohydrate? The answer is yes, because it is a plant. It is a carbohydrate. Is an apple a carbohydrate? Yes. So just ask yourself, is it a plant? Then it has carbohydrates in it. Is an avocado a plant? Yes, it has carbohydrates. But it also has fat in it, and it also has protein. So it's actually a good food. It's got all three food groups, but it's just a food. It's not a food group. Another reason people get confused on carbohydrates is because they think of milk. Milk has carbohydrates in it, and I've had this thrown at me before. They'll say, aha, milk's not a plant. That's correct. So they'll say, then you can't use the term plant for carbohydrate. But I'll tell you why milk has carbohydrates in it. It's because of nature. Herbivores, say like a deer, whose offspring only eat plant material, when they're born, they cannot go out and graze. Predators will take them. They have to hide. But they have to have plant material. Where does that plant material come from? From the mother, from the milk. What did the mother eat? Plant material. There's transfer of carbohydrates through the mother's milk to the offspring, but it's still plant material. That's why milk has carbohydrates in it. Now, sometimes they fortify it with like vitamin D and calcium and other things, mainly to get you to buy it. But that's another story, which we'll get into later when we talk about food labeling. So you have proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And fats kind of explain themselves. There's different types of fats. Fats are basically fatty acids strung together, and your body needs these three things: fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Now, they don't know the exact amount. They know maybe the number of calories, but should you have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3? That nobody really knows. They recommend on protein, only 10% of your calories come from protein. So you don't need as much protein as you might think. Even big time weightlifters and people that work out don't need as much protein. There's a lot of evidence that extra protein can cause some problems. Now, that doesn't mean it's a bad food either, because we need it. But there's no storage place for extra amino acids, and too much of it can lead to some problems. It doesn't mean it's a bad food. People get hung up on the term good food, bad food. The food is always the same. People can be good or bad, but food is food. I mean, it doesn't have a personality. What makes a food bad for you is when you eat it and your blood glucose is already normal. And even if you eat a few apples and your blood glucose goes up, then that's not good, because you're overeating, blood glucose goes up. Doesn't mean the apple's a bad food. It just means at that particular moment, you didn't eat any food. So you hadn't eaten all day and you eat a cheeseburger from McDonald's. That's not a bad food, because your glucose was low, you haven't eaten, it's got fats, carbs, and proteins. So it's not a bad food, it's high in calories. You just can't have a lifestyle doing that all the time because it's too many calories. And you need a variety of foods. So I don't look at one as being good as one as being bad. I think it's more lifestyle. It's more, what is your glucose level when you eat the food. That's what determines whether the food is good or bad for you. So, 3 components of nutrition so far are the food groups: fats, carbs, and proteins. Now, I said there's 8. The other 5 are water, you gotta have water, and then vitamins, minerals, fiber. Anything you eat you don't digest is fiber. And the last one are phytochemicals. One word, phyto, P-H-Y-T-O, chemicals. Those are the chemicals in plants, and there's thousands of them. There's like 25,000 of them they've identified. Our bodies use maybe a couple of thousand of them. You've heard of all these. They sell them in the stores, drinks, phytochemicals. That's why eating plant material, which plants are chock full of phytochemicals and vitamins, it's a healthy diet. Now, that doesn't mean that just because somebody's a vegan or vegetarian, they're necessarily healthier than somebody that eats meat. I think they're healthier because of their lifestyle. If somebody tells me they're a vegan, remember, a vegan is somebody that doesn't eat anything from an animal, which means they don't have milk or eggs or anything. It comes from an animal, they don't eat it. That's a vegan. Or an insect, no honey. A vegetarian doesn't eat meat. Now, if somebody tells me they're a vegan or a vegetarian, that means they're probably health conscious. Maybe they don't overeat. Maybe they exercise. They do some other things. That's probably more related to why they're healthy than the fact that they avoid meat, although they get protein from other sources. Most vegans and vegetarians are not deficient in protein. A vegan has to be a little bit more careful, especially kids that are vegans. And they're usually vegans because their parents' religious reasons. They can still get plenty of protein, but they have to be a little bit more careful about it, because there's different ways to actually look at that. I don't know if it's necessarily cause effect. It's a healthy lifestyle, but it doesn't. I know people that are vegans and vegetarians that aren't that healthy. Their eating makes them somewhat healthy, but the other things they do, they're not as healthy as they probably could be. So vitamins, minerals, there's a video later on that talks about vitamins. It's going to really surprise you as to what's going on with vitamins. It sounds healthy, and which ones should I take or not take, or should I take them? Same thing with minerals, because there's a lot of confusion on that. And it's just the name, I think, confuses people. Vita means life. It's Latin for life. It sounds healthy. And so they discovered them in foods about 100 years ago, and they named them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, all the way up. And then they said, oh, this one's not a vitamin like F, so they took it out. That's why you have A, B, C, D, E, and then blah, 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 all the way up to K. And then that's B, and then they discovered between B and C, no numbers, no letters between B and C. So they gave them numbers like B1, B2, B3. And then they said, oh, that's not one either. So now that's why those are named weird. B1, B2, B3, B5, B6, B7, B9, they skipped the B8. There used to be one, and that's because they were confused on that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't get too hung up on that. I'm not big on memorizing all that stuff. Once again, and I think I made this statement last time, nothing wrong with taking vitamins. It may be helping a little bit. I don't know that it helps a lot. It depends upon lifestyle, but the kind they sell over the counter, they're not regulated at all. They can lie and say it's in there, and it cannot be in there at all. No regulations whatsoever. They could say it could have stuff in there that they don't even tell you about. And they've researched this. They found all kinds of anomalies that people were, just because it's a nice label and printed a certain way and looks really good, and you say, oh, wow, this looks healthy. You don't really know what's in it. It's not regulated by the FDA. They can put anything in it they want. It could be a sugar pill. It's perfectly legal for them to do that. Now, most of them don't do that, but some of them have been caught doing that. And I can name brands, and when you watch a video called Vitamania, you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, cells need certain vitamins. Some cells need more of certain vitamins than other cells. Cells know what they need. So if you take an extra vitamin A thinking it's going to improve your eyesight, the cells that use more vitamin A, retinol, if you give it extra retinol and they don't need it, they're not going to take it in. So it's really not going to improve your vision, even though you think it is. Lack of retinol, yeah, you could actually go blind, but your body generally just won't let that happen because you have reserves of all these vitamins stored in your cells. The fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, are stored in fat cells. You got 2 months of the supply in there. So to go blind from lack of vitamin A, you'd have to really be deficient for a very long time. It's possible that video Vitamania talks about a guy that didn't have any vitamin A and he lost sight in one eye, but it took years for that to actually happen. But vitamins don't cure any disease except a disease caused by a deficiency of that vitamin. Scurvy is almost unheard of now. Possible, but it's rare. That's lack of vitamin C. So if you have scurvy, take vitamin C. If you have some bone loss, that's somewhat related to vitamin D. They recommend take extra vitamin D. But as I mentioned last time, too much D can cause problems, especially calcium buildup. And extra calcium can cause some problems. Although you need calcium in a deficiency, can also cause some problems. So you got to be careful about taking just mega doses of any particular vitamin. I think if you take vitamins, take a multivitamin. That's fine. You have a little bit of something just in case you're deficient in something, because you never know. But I'd be real careful about taking individual ones, a bunch of them. Now, if you take a vitamin D and an E and an A, even one a day, every day, that's not an excessive amount. But I know people that take a bunch of them. So you got to be real careful about taking too much of any particular vitamin, although it would take a massive amount for you to have real toxic problems. And I mean a bunch, even a vitamin D. But yeah, I know people that take it a lot, but it's really complicated on how vitamin D actually works in the body. And the kind you buy over the counter is D3, and that process of how that allows calcium to get into bones is much more complicated than just taking vitamin D saying, oh, okay, now my bones are going to be stronger because of that. Same thing with calcium. Just take some calcium. Oh, your bones are made out of calcium, and therefore I took calcium, my bones are going to be stronger. That's like having a house that's falling down and just throwing a bunch of wood inside and say, okay, yeah, now the house is going to rebuild itself. It'll be stronger. No, there's many things that have to happen. And this is true for the vitamins and the minerals and the processes that actually go on in the body. Much more complicated than people think. Now, so what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to wrap this meeting up in just about 5 or 10 minutes, but I'm going to do a little screen share, and I'm going to give you a glimpse. I'm going to pull up 80 questions on test number 1. And like I said, there's the probability is you'll have 40 of these because they're randomly selected. They won't. If you notice, if you take the test twice, you go like, whoa, I get some of the questions are the same, some are different because they come from a test bank out of 200 questions. So let me share a screen here. Now remember, this is recorded. And so I'm going to go through it so fast you can say, well, I didn't even have time to read it. Well, when you go back and watch the video, then you can read it or do whatever you want to do with it. So let me minimize this. Okay, I got to open another browser. Otherwise, if I close this browser, this meeting will close. And I'm going to give you a glimpse of okay, here we go. Okay, so here's this class. Now, if I go to modules. Anytime you get lost, go to the modules section. By the way, once again, on the modules section, down here at the bottom, these are all the study guides, all of these for the whole class. So if you want to start working on them, trying to get them all done ahead of time, they're all right there. You don't have to wait for each individual module to print them out. There's PowerPoints. Some of the questions, sometimes these help. Students say, I want to look at the PowerPoint, which is fine, but I don't, the test is not made from the PowerPoint, but they're there in case you want them. And and by the way, this is a 50-point bonus video. It's an hour-and-a-half video, but it's interesting. It's good. It's like watching a movie. You watch a movie, take the little quiz, and you can get up to 50 bonus points. This is open the whole class. It's about water memory. It's very eye-opening. There's going to be some real surprises when you watch this that people don't. Water actually has memory, not like the brain does, but it's complicated. But you watch this, even if you say, "Wow, I only got half of it right," it's still bonus points. It'll help you great. And most people that watch it get most of these questions right anyway. And then there's one more here about forced fasting. Like, how long can you go without food? Without food. This is actually a true story, and that's actually worth 20 points. So those are open the whole time. But anyway, let's go to the test. So we're in week number 2. That video is here, Vitamania, because some are so compressed I get confused on. This is a great video. You can't get this on YouTube. I actually had to pay a little bit to get this, not much. And this is the one that I think you'll find very interesting. This guy's really good. He has a PhD in physics, but he decided to research vitamins, and that's a 40.1. This is one of the longer ones, but I guarantee it's not boring. I think you'll find it very interesting. But anyway, so let's go to test 1. Here's test 1 right here. So when you take the test, this is what you'll see. Now I'm going to do it. It's worth 200 points, but there's only 100 questions, so each question is worth 2 points. When I do preview, it's going to randomly choose 100 questions. And I'm going to show you 80 of them. That's a lot. So here's the, okay, it says 95 questions, not 100, because I made the first questions, this right here, and this is actually already in the module section part of it. So the first part of it, this will be question number 1 for you. Like, what is a carbohydrate? And say, oh, plant material. You click that, because this question is worth 10 points. That's why there's, phytochemicals. What are phytochemicals? Chemicals in plants. So all of this, apoptosis, what is that? Programmed cell death. Autophagy, you can look it up, but it means self-eating. But this will be question number 1 for you, and it's worth 10 points. So go back and look through this. Now this is where it'll start being different. Number 2. So I'm going to scroll down through 80 of these. That's a lot. Now I know this is fast. You're not going to have time to read this. But when you go back and watch the video, there's a good chance, or a 50-50 chance, that you'll have any of these questions. And here are the choices over here. So if you go back and spend a little time doing this, you say, hey, I've done about 40 of the questions already, plus I have my study guides already done. I'll think you'll be in really good shape. So I said I would go down to 80. Like I said, I know I'm going fast. I don't expect you to be able to read this. See, some of them are true false. So, at least you have a 50-50 chance on that. If you see Homer Simpson, wrong answer, obviously don't press that. The reason I do that is because when I go back and look and I see too many people put the wrong answer, the same wrong answer, then I just say, this be tricky questions. So I'll say, don't choose that one. And I did that occasionally on quite a few of them actually, because I look at them and see if a lot of people are missing the same type of question, that maybe something is wrong with the question. This question was real weird. Nobody could figure it out. So here it is. Which of the following is considered a food desert, not dessert, desert? So many people were getting so many different answers. I made one answer. So I would recommend you choose that answer. So 48, yes, we're about to wrap up here. I'm gonna go down to 80. You'll notice all these are in your study guide also. Well, all of them, 90% of them, maybe 95% of them are in the study guide. But the study guide doesn't have these choices right here. The study guide, you just have to look at the book and kind of figure it out. And 66, 67. Remember, I'm going to post this by tomorrow at the latest, probably not tonight, but by tomorrow. So when you go back and check in the module section, you'll see. Check today's date, June the 8th video. This will all be there. Sometimes I just like to stop and look at these. In the next section, I'm going to talk more about cholesterol readings like HDL, LDL. Like HDL is the good cholesterol and LDL is the bad cholesterol. But once again, it's actually more complicated than that. If you go to the doctor and have your cholesterol checked, they'll say, this is your HDL and this is your LDL. And I think sometimes it's hard to interpret. But that's the way they have been trained to actually do it. Now, sometimes even myself, I have to double check things. So an individual with blood glucose levels that drop below 70 milligrams per 100 milliliters of blood would be considered to have. Now, remember I said normal 120 to 80, below 80 is getting a little risky, below 70, that's low blood glucose. So that would be hypo. Hypo means low, glycemia means glucose, low blood sugar. So that would be hypoglycemia. Hyper is, depending upon what book you read, some doctors will say 130 is hyper, some say it has to get up to 140 or 150. I've heard it being way, way up there, but after you eat a meal, it goes up, obviously, for everybody. So if it stays high, then at some point they'll diagnose you as diabetic. So that's 80 questions, going backwards down through it. And then guys, I'm going to give you the third code. Now, remember, when you watch this, you can obviously slow down and pause the video. And be sure and, take the little, when we finish here, take the little quiz. So the third code is 453. Third code is 453. So you have your three codes. Take the little quiz. You'll be in good shape. If you run into any problems, message me. If you do well on the first test, because the first test actually students tell me is harder than the rest of them, I think you'll be in good shape. These other little videos and assignments, and there's little bonus stuff that pops up every now and then. Remember, bonus is bonus. You don't have to do it. It's optional. You can do it if you want to. You don't necessarily have to do it. So I review the codes one more time. the problem with giving them all at the end is that people will figure out, hey, I'll just scroll to the end and get the codes, but then they'll miss the other stuff. So the first code is 356, second code is 362, the second code is 453. So I'm going to end the meeting here in just a minute. So when you go back, go to modules, when we end here, go to the module section. We're in week number 2. We just did our little Zoom video conference. Oh, here it is. You'll click on this, and there's a little quiz. It says enter the 3 codes, preview. Well, and this is exactly what you're going to see. Enter code 1, 2, and 3, submit your quiz, and you'll notice you get your 100% that pops up right away. Okay, before we end the meeting in the last couple of minutes, and anybody can unmute themselves. Does anybody have any questions on anything? Hopefully somebody will have a question. At least one question. Yeah, go ahead, anybody.
Is test 2 also due this week?
You know, I'm not sure. Let me check. Go to the modules. It might be. Let's see. No.
I thought Stuart was looking after.
It's S1. Oh, it is. Test 2 is due this week. You know what? I'm glad you pointed that out, because there's also, guys, once again on modules, I didn't talk about test 2 a lot. The reason is, this is a very short class. So, somebody's microphone's on, if you could mute it for just a minute. If you go to the modules section, even though I didn't specifically show you anything on test 2, go to all recorded Zoom meetings, current and past. Let this thing load in. Okay. This is today. I'm going to put this video in here probably tomorrow. But if you go to this, Q&A and other meetings, here it is. Zoom Cloud Recording Q&A session, chapter test 2 review. You click on that here, and that takes you to Zoom, but that actually is kind of the same thing as this. Not the best there, but I guarantee I did a screen share in there somewhere showing test 2. Let me go down through this. I'll probably end up skipping part of it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I actually am showing part of it. And some of the PowerPoints that are actually associated with it. So that is, let me end that. That's the review for test number 2. And unfortunately that's due this week also. So, but it's no different than test number 1. If you have your study guides done and take a little peek at this little video, I actually think you'll be fine. Some weeks we have to have 2 tests because there's 5 tests and there's only 4 weeks. And I think, unfortunately, this is the week that has 2. And there's not much I can do about that. But as I said in the previous message, I've had people have C test averages and make an A in the class because they did all the bonus stuff. So do the best you can on the tests and do the other stuff. And I think grade-wise, you'll actually be okay. Okay, is anybody have any more questions? No?
Many more.
Oh, that's me talking. I'm saying it's an annoying voice. It's my voice. Okay, guys, I'm going to end the meeting. Good luck on the first 2 tests. Complete all the assignments, get your grade up high, and I think you'll be in good shape. Bye for now.